Hello, welcome to this month's painting tutorial. This month we're going to explore increasing the drama in your paintings. And the surefire way of doing that is increasing contrasts. So for this month I've chosen this high contrast piece of a woman scratching her cat. And you can see that the background corner here is almost all black. Then I gave myself a little mini grid by dividing the top into 4 equal quadrants and the sides here into 4 equal quadrants. In order to make that work, I'm going to have to develop a similar sized rectangle on my painting material. And I see that the woman's head lies right here. Her shoulders come down about here. So I'm starting to develop this using those large shapes first and developing them in terms of those guidelines just so I can put them down faster and with greater confidence. I've adjusted the drawings and I feel like I'm ready to push forward. I added masking fluid to these small highlights. I'm going to paint her flesh tone in one fell swoop. Paint over all of that flesh tone. Up here there's more yellow, so I'm going to drop in some more raw sienna. When she is in shadow, the area next to the highlight is going to go to red and even blue. So I'm just adding some shadow shapes here by mixing in some blue. The blue mixed with the red that I've already put down makes it purplish. And everything on her face is going to be somewhat indistinct. I'm just adding some darks to indicate some beginnings of features. I'll let the color pool on these arms. And don't be afraid of just pure application of color. Her hair is really dark. I'm just going to put that down in a swath of blue to begin with. Then while that's still wet, I'll add some yellows over here and a mixture that I made with some red and blues to make a purple on this dark side that's facing the shadows. I'm also going to add a bit of red, drop it in here at the side of the hair. Trust me, it's going to look awesome. Then I'm getting a little bit of cobalt blue and I'm going to start to paint in this purple. But you have to be aware, wherever the paint is still wet, those colors are going to bleed together. Up here it's pretty light struck, so I'm going to use less paint. I'll add a little bit of blue into this so I can start to indicate the jeans. And I have a really sharp line here where the light is hitting the jeans. Now I've got some blue on the brush. I'm just going to add a little bit more dark to some of these skin tones. But what's really important to remember is that I started with a nice, clean, clear drawing. So I'm not just putting down craziness everywhere. I always had an idea of where I was going to be going. I'm going to add some orange and let these purple and orange colors develop into a new wood tone. Then, while I've got that on my brush, I'm also going to add that color down here to the wood floor. And I'm going to stroke up into the shadows, knowing that I can darken it up later, easy as you please. With just a little bit of color on my brush and a lot of water, I'm going back now and I'm going to clean up this light struck area and then just wash up. Here's some more wood down here. Now I'm going to let this dry and then come back with some more shadow shapes. That first layer has dried now, so I'm going to go back into the painting with some really intense darks. So start on the edge that needs to be precise and go slowly and carefully with plenty of paint. During this step, you're going to be grateful for everything that you've done to contain and protect whites. Because when I don't have protection, I have to go extra carefully, just like this. And then when I'm getting out of that area, I can go a lot faster. Don't be afraid to put down plenty of color. It's going to dry lighter, and you need it to be really intense. Remember, this is how to add drama to your paintings. You need those really clean, precise lines of division, and you need strong, punched up contrasts in order to make that drama work. On the very edge, I'm going to put straight burnt sienna on the page and then tilt the board to let it mix and flood up into the painting. Down here, I'm going to tear a piece of masking tape and protect this dark shadow. So then watch how I can just flood over the top of this shadow color, drop in a few different colors. I'm just letting that paint itself. And on the light struck edge of this shadow, I'm just going to blot up some of that color and drag it up into the shadow. I'll also blot the white edge that I just cleaned so that those colors and the wet paint don't come back flooding down into this. There we go. Since this is protected up here, I can do the same thing to a few of these darks and add some shadows to this doorway. I'll turn my painting upside down, add some additional darks right up in here. I moved the painting so that I would have more control again. And then I'm just going to let well enough alone, let this all dry, and come back into it with some more darks. This is dry now, so I'm going to do the same thing in this underarm area. And I'm going to turn the paper so that I have the most control. And carefully outline the arm. All of this is dark. And her jeans are dark, and I don't want it to seem like chunk. So I'm going to bring the dark into the clothes. And then I'll flood in some more color. And then I'm doing that same thing that I did on the floor. I'm sort of battling back and forth. There's a strong shadow here, and that color extends right around the cat. So while it's still on my brush, I'm going to go up, put it down like this, and like this. Okay, this is the same color that I see on the carpet here. Slide that down into place. And then I have some really light struck flower shapes on this carpet. Only working on the dry paper, I will go in and draw those designs. And then I'm at a good place to let it rest again, wait for that masking fluid to dry, and wait for those new darks to dry. I'll come back and we'll push it forward again. Okay, now I'm going to paint over the top of the rug. So mix up that light green color, and then the trick to doing this overlay work is do it in one pass. Don't go back over the top again, because then your colors will start to move on you. And let that dry completely. Then while that's drying, I'll paint the shirt with a Sunstruck purple. And then before taking the masking fluid off the hair, to make it really nice, rich, dark color. And I'll use the brush on the side to paint this one strand of escaped hair. Boop. Alright, now let's add a little bit of tone to this cat. I'll develop this tawny color around the hand. And I'm letting some yellows and some oranges mix right on the page. Let's add a few more reds, let them mix in so that it looks spectacular and very interesting. Oh, and while we're here, you know what? I'm also gonna add this gray base tone to the bowl. So there's a base tone for this bowl. And now I'm ready to let it dry. Once everything is completely dry and you've gotten this far, you can remove that masking fluid. And the next step, after it's all removed, is to go back and soften those up so they're not so glaring. So to do that, I'm going to get a flat brush, damp, and you can either paint more paint over the top with a lighter shade, or you can just keep it wet and clean, and as you re-wet those edges, enough is going to come up that a softer color will emerge. You don't want to lose all of your lights though. So a good rule of thumb is to glance at the paper, and if there are any whites that just jump out at you like that, then they might be too vivid and you can just tone them back. Then when I'm done with that step, I will use a round brush and I'll go into some detail work. So I'll do some details in the cat's face, just adding some darks to indicate those eyes a little bit better. So in this step, I have the shape of the shadows and the darks in about the right place, but now I'm just sharpening up smaller details. And I'm doing that by working around the highlights and emphasizing some of these dark shapes. I don't think I want any of this bright whisker here, so I'm going to get rid of the whole thing. And then I can pick up some of that background color and bring this whisker in. Let me do this sort of work off camera, since it's going to take a long time, and tighten up some of the details in the cat and the woman here, and then I'll come back and we'll push it forward. Bringing out some of these details is really bringing the painting along here. Let me show you some techniques for pushing it even farther. You can see that there's a sharp edge, a very straight shadow on the edge of the carpet there. I want to put that in, but I don't want my hand to slip, so I'm going to use tape. Then when that's in place, I have a nice dark greeny blue mixed up, and I can put that in with the confidence of having one edge protected. Then peel that up carefully because the paint isn't quite completely dry. Then I'll use that same color and go into the shadow of the carpet and just really loosely add an indication of some of that pattern that I see in the highlight areas. I can do a little bit of that same work here. Continue on this pattern that is in the shadow. Let's add some stripes to our cat. That's just a matter of putting some darks over the top here. If you put it over the whiskers, make sure that you preserve your whiskers, because obviously the stripe is behind the whiskers. When you're working in the highlight, make sure to change color. Okay, let's add some detail to this water bowl. It's reflective metal, and so you're going to be able to see some colors and some really sharp highlights and darks. So I put down that dark gray first, then I'm going to add some red to it. Then on the underside, I'm just going to work carefully to visualize this entire shadow shape. It's one big shape. So I always go in with the darkest shapes first. Then I fill in with my midtones and preserve the highlights in the same step. Then I'm going to let those shadows dry completely. I'm going to pull out some highlights in her face to bring out some detail. But think of this as pulling out negative detail. I'm just using a damp brush and rubbing over that area. And since this is watercolor, while the paint is still a little bit wet, that is just going to lift up for me. I'll use that same process to clean up the highlight and to lighten up under her chin and on the nostril and the tip of the nose. See, I just go over it again and again and again, gradually clean it up that way. The reference material has a red house showing, but I don't want that because I think that the red is distracting. So I'm just going to carefully use clean water, go around her arm, and then I'm going to flood in with nice bright yellow. And I'm going to drop in a little bit of blue and clean water to flood that up, zoop, so that it's not so intense. And then let's peel off our borders so that you can see better what the finished piece would look like with a frame. See, a clean white border really strengthens the composition even further. So that concludes this month's painting tutorial. I hope that you've learned a lot of things you can take back with you to your own studio. I hope that you'll develop some stronger contrasts and brighter, more intense colors in your work and see where that takes you. And as usual, I thank you so much for watching.